Is that why we can't swear?
You can swear because you're in a closed studio, but it'll go on a podcast. Okay, now I'm recording your Zencaster mic too. All right, here we go. All right, introduction starting from the top of Act 2. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm here in a Google Hangout with my two good friends, Mr. Juan Pons, Mr. Dan Ablin. Hey, guys, how you doing?
Frederick, how are you?
Great, hey. I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to get going with this show because
yes, me too.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I am a self-professed Apple geek. Not only because I worked at Apple, a fanboy, geek, whatever. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. People use it as a derogatory term, but I'm okay with it. I've embraced my reality distortion field susceptibility. I'm okay with it. And that's what this show is all about. Before we dive into it, Dan, I was in your city not too long ago hanging out, which was my city, and now it's your city. What's going on? We haven't talked in a while.
I know. I saw you when you were here. I didn't see you, but I mean, I was watching you online. Yep. So sorry we didn't get to hang out, but next time. But a lot has changed since I saw you last.
Wow.
I don't even remember when that was.
It's been like 3 months at least, 2 or 3 months.
Yeah. Well, we'd closed the studio.
Yep. I remember that.
Yeah. And the funny thing was with that, which could be a whole show in itself, I want to say there's at least 4 other really big photographers, studio photographers that same within the last year or two, we're done.
Really? Not done with photography.
Keynote speakers.
Done with the brick and mortar.
Not done with photography, right?
Okay.
Done with the brick and mortar, yeah.
Yeah.
And for us, we were okay with it, but it wasn't fun anymore. And so I still have all my gear, all my lights. I still shoot. Spoke at the Out of Photography conference this summer.
Yeah.
Speaking at a digital summit in November. We're going to talk about digital photography. So yeah, it's still a big part of everything I do, but we were just.
Yeah. So
and its course. It was 7 years.
Yeah. So how not to go in too much of a rabbit hole, but going from the quote terrestrial studio to everyone else, just. The guy with the camera running around and without the physical place to meet. I remember when we first started talking, you were talking about how it's nice to have that physical place to meet because you can bring in the clients and wine and dine them and do all that stuff. Yeah. How is it now that you don't have that?
Well, I'm not doing that. That's the thing.
Okay.
For me now, it's just shooting. I do have a couple of people that want me to shoot for them, so it's outside only. And I'm holding on to the studio lights just for now. I'm not set up in a basement in the garage and doing all that. So I'm going back to my roots, which is shooting the city, more photojournalistic. That's what I went to college for. Yeah. And, got into the studio thing about 10 years ago, did it. It was great. But just kind of going back to basics now. So
no more seniors and portraits and that sort of thing, or are you still doing that?
Just my daughter.
Nice.
Just my daughter. Yeah, and if I do the portraits, they're going to be city-based, or I'm going to partner with another photographer at their studio, something like that. So
yeah, totally. Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
awesome. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. That's awesome. Well, there was part of it too. I went to work full time as well for Jim Beam.
Oh, wait a minute.
For Jim Beam.
Wait, yeah. hold the press. Hold the press. This is important.
I thought a lot's changed.
For Jim Beam?
Yeah, I was consulting for them. I was consulting them doing 3D. Because that's the other part of all my work. One thing led to another. They offered me a full-time job to come be their director of production, head of production. So I took it. So grew their photography, which was all for the social media, which you can go look online. And I shot a couple of times, but mostly I was heading up all the other photographers, and then handling some of the print. But mostly the production managers did that. So it was great. But as of a couple of weeks ago, I'm out of there. So it was a good year, but they eliminated the position. So now back to doing some photography and 3D and some more digital work for a couple of other clients, and got some other things cooking.
So yeah, we definitely need to do a one-on-one sit-down interview and catch up with you, because I want to dive in deep with this transition from the brick and mortar.
Really interesting.
Yeah, so let's dive in deep on that. The other guest on the show is Mr. Juan Pons. Mr. Juan's sitting there like crickets going.
I almost fell asleep. I had to drink my coffee. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I have some
on,
bourbon
man?
here if you want.
You've been traveling around. Last time we spoke, you were just about to go to where, the Sierras or something crazy like that.
Well, this I usually take the summer off and do stuff with the family. We did a trip. I'm going. I live in Maine, so we went down to the Skyline Drive, Blue Ridge Parkway, Smokies. We spent some time in Washington D.C. and I've just been kind of crazy now. This week, actually last week, was my first week at home for real. And because my season starts in 2 weeks, I start going full throttle.
I know what that means
until
too.
next summer. Yeah.
I know what that means because I have deadlines. You and I have deadlines to work out.
Right, we do. Yes, I mean, and a lot of those deadlines have been because you and I have been so busy. But yeah. I start going out to do Acadia, then go to New Mexico, then go to Yellowstone, then go to Cuba, then go to Alaska, and I forget where else.
That is the life. I swear that you're not the only photographer I know that does that stuff. But in that, whenever I hear that, like Martin Bailey will rattle off all these crazy places he's going as well, and it's just like that. I want to do that. I want to be that photographer that's like, yeah, I'm going to Madagascar, and then I'm going to Paris, and then I'm going to Milan, and then I'm going to South America. How do I get to be that guy? I want to be that guy.
Sometimes you gotta be careful what you wish for. Traveling like this nowadays is not as much fun as it used to be. But no, I feel I'm incredibly fortunate that I get to go to all these incredible places, see these incredible things, and there's a lot of new stuff that I have planned that's going to put all that to shame in the next year or so. So yeah, I'm pretty excited.
All right, you're coming on the show too. I hear another one-on-one interview that I need to do. That's cool. All right, guys, let's dive into the show. So the first thing, story number one, last week, well, the overall show is going to be focused on the Apple announcement. So be forewarned, if you hate Apple, if you're one of those people that gets sick of anything that has to do with Apple around this time of year, this show is going to be talking about Apple because
Apple overload.
It's the name of this show is This Week in Photography, and that's what happened last week in photography. So,
yes, that's right.
So we're kind of obligated to talk about them because they're not an insignificant company. So what they made a number of announcements. The first thing I want to talk about is the iPad Pro and this iPad Pencil. So the iPad Pro is a 12.9-inch iPad, a giant iPad. I'm reading the specs here. The resolution is 2732 by 2048, or 5.6 million pixels, and they say it's more pixels than any other iOS device they have, which is expected because this is bigger than any other iOS device they have. They said it's as wide as an iPad Air 2, which is the next smaller iPad, and as tall, meaning you can now split your screen to work in two apps at the same time with no compromises or anything. They also announced a new smart case, which looks suspiciously like the Microsoft Surface, their keyboard.
Very similar.
If not exactly the same thing. And it has an 8-megapixel iSight camera in the back, 10 hours of battery life. It's thin, it's light, and it's $800 for the 32 gigabyte, $950 for the 128, and $1080 for the maxed out 128 LTE version, which I know the version that you guys would get. And then the other piece of this is they announced the Apple Pencil. And there's a couple things I want to talk about with that pencil. So basically, it's a stylus. First thing, when Steve Jobs announced the iPad, you remember that video? I went back and watched that video where he said styluses or styli are dumb, and we all have 10 of them, and now Apple is making the Apple Pencil. So never believe anything these tech companies say. So now they announced the Apple Pencil, so I want to talk about that a little bit. But also, I was in the Apple Store yesterday buying a little stand for my Apple Watch, and on the shelf there was a pencil, a stylus for your iPad, and it's named Pencil. So I'm wondering, how does that even work? I mean, does Apple just say, you know what? We know you guys are playing in this market right now, but you're smaller than us. We're the world's largest tech company. We're going to take your brand,
We could just buy you out,
We can just buy you. Right. We'll give you a couple $1,000 or whatever. But anyway, let's dive into this. Dan, when you saw this, and I know you saw the announcement because it's kind of important to photographers from a number of perspectives. But when you saw this, were you thinking, I already have an iPad, or I'm not an iPad guy. It's too big, or were you drooling and like, okay, finally they made something I can show my portfolio on?
Actually, it's kind of funny because at first I was like, it's a bigger one. Yeah, kind of expected. But then once I really sat down with the Apple TV, I watch it. I'll watch it a little bit online. I'll listen to it as I'm working. But then later that night, I'll watch the whole thing all the way through. When they did the 3D medical, which I do a lot of 3D medical.
Oh, right.
Actually,
I didn't even
I've been doing that for years.
Yep.
For years. Matter of fact, I'm working on 2 of them this week alone, 3D medical animations. When I saw that stuff on there, thinking about that pencil, and I know, that in the beginning with the finger, that was for the phones. Now I'm thinking about the guys I know when I've done training for the guys down at like Hallmark, which I think listen to the show, all the guys down in Kansas City. They were one of the first ones to get the Cintiq, and they're using it for 3D modeling and sculpting. And I'm thinking in those realms, aside from photography, which will be great as a portfolio, but that thing where it's actually a secondary monitor. And all those capabilities, because when the iPad first came out, I was really disappointed that I wanted a portable computer like that, and it was just, that was a big iPhone. Since then, it's really improved. Got mine. I always upgrade. It's great. But this one, this is going to be a real game changer, because not just because of the size, but I think because of the resolution, the speed. Using the stylus, I think pen would have been better than pencil. I don't know, but just in terms of 3D, in terms of Photoshop, and the app developments that are going to come because of this, it's really going to be a game changer.
Yeah, I know. I have to agree with you on all points. One, what about you? Is this something that you got excited about, or just more Apple stuff to not buy?
No, I thought it was great. I mean, I don't think the iPad Pro is for me because I like smaller devices. But I mean, when you think about the number of pixels on this device, just looking at the number of pixels, this has more pixels than my 32-inch cinema display.
Yes, it does.
Literally, it does. By a long shot. It's amazing that they can pack those. I know it's a Retina display. Not everything is scaled at, but the resolution on it is going to be unbelievable. I've always, I know that Steve Jobs said if you see a stylus, they lost, right? They just didn't do it right. And Steve Jobs and Apple, when somebody else does something, it's always wrong, but when they do it, it's right. Of
course.
That's their attitude. That's how they do it. And I have a stylus that I've used in the past. I think this one's called the Cosmonaut, and it's useful for certain things. I use it on the iPad. But if you're someone that uses a tablet like the Cintiq, have you ever used a Cintiq? Have you used one, Fred?
No. You know what? I've tried one. Other people have had them, and they've always been out of my price range. So I've only been able to adore them from afar.
Right, and and I've used them quite a bit. I don't have one. I've used them quite a bit.
I don't have one.
And there are a lot of problems with them. First they lag. They have a huge lag from when you're drawing, so that the stroke doesn't follow your pencil as much. And there's a parallax problem. The tip of the pen feels like it's an inch away from the screen.
Oh, because the glass is so thick.
It's so thick. So when you're drawing, I mean, you have to, suspend belief, so to speak.
Yeah.
You don't feel like you're actually drawing on the surface, and that's one of the things that they really emphasize: the fact that this thing is so close to the screen that you actually feel like you're drawing it. And I think that alone is going to be huge.
Yeah.
And that one feature has me kind of curious about it. Even though I like the iPad Mini, that's my device because it's small, I can carry it with me.
Me too. Yeah.
Just the fact that I don't know. You never know. Once they move Lightroom over, make it a little more capable on the iPad Pro.
Yeah. And that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, I have an iPad Mini and I love it, and I got the maxed out version with AT&T, so I can use it wherever. And I love the device. It's like the Kindle and the internet, everything with me all the time in my camera bag, and it's not very much weight added to it. So when I saw this, well, first of all, when I go into these keynotes, I always go in as a curmudgeon. I'm like, okay, what are they going to reinvent this time? But I got to tell you, after this one, I was completely marinated in the reality distortion. I was like, I got to have one of everything that they announced. I don't care how much it costs. I'll take out a second mortgage. I need it, And this big iPad, I was looking at it, and I was like, okay, that's nice. And I could see, I instantly thought of my friend Craig Colvin, who comes on the show from time to time. He does a lot of glamour photography, and he's always carrying his iPad around with him to show people his work, because that's the best way to show your work these days is on an iPad. And I was like, okay, Craig is going to order one of these day one because it's ideal. It's the ideal portfolio device. But for me, I'm thinking, okay, would it be another thing that I purchased that I don't use that much, or because I'm going to be using my iPad mini all the time, or would I actually use this thing? Dan, like you were saying, there's software out there that lets you attach your iPad to your Mac so that it becomes another display. So I was thinking, okay, well, maybe it will become another display. But do I really need another display? Because I have a Retina display right now.
Okay, think about it like this. I have this portfolio book that I go to meetings with and interviews, and because I'm interviewing.
Yep.
And inside it, one side's a pad. The other side is actually all meant for the iPad, and then you can pick it up and you can turn it, and so when the portfolio is open like this, I can actually pop the iPad and then show people things.
Cool.
And it's fantastic. And I bring that with me, and it zips up into a whole little portfolio case. Now, everything being cloud-based, which is interesting that Microsoft was at the Apple event. That was really interesting.
Yeah, that was eyebrow-raising. But
yeah, but all the new Office apps are really, really terrific. Yeah. I've been doing more cloud-based documents than ever before. So you think about using this as maybe a Cintiq type atmosphere, which now is affordable because I couldn't ever afford one.
Yeah.
So you've got that next to your computer as a stylus tablet for 3D modeling, for retouching your photos, everything else. But then you're cloud-based, or you're just copying things over, fold it up with the little keyboard, off to the meeting you go. Laptop can just stay lightweight. You know,
totally.
I can actually see it pretty useful now with everything being cloud-based.
The problem is the camera bags that I've purchased are
I know where I'm going.
Are designed for my iPad mini. You know, it's like, okay, I got everything locked in. I got a slot for my iPad mini. It goes right in there. Now I got to rethink everything if I get this out of this big iPad, right?
Get a bigger backpack.
Get a bigger backpack. You know, the cool thing I was thinking also during this keynote during the presentation was our friends over at AstroPad. You know those? Are you guys familiar with AstroPad?
No.
Oh, okay. Go to AstroPad and check these guys out. So these are some really smart developers who I believe are ex-Apple employees, and they've created a piece of software for your Mac and for your iPad that essentially mirrors your Mac onto the iPad, so it becomes a Cintiq.
Oh, yeah,
so now you can retouch.
Yeah, I have seen this, yes.
Yeah, I have seen this. I didn't know the name of it, but I've seen this.
Yeah.
That gets me excited. I think that would be really cool. Think about using Photoshop right on it, or Lightroom right on it, being able to draw right on the device. So like I said, I've used this in Cintiq before with Lightroom, and it's, again, you gotta wrap your head around it. You gotta think. It's like flying a flight simulator. You've heard people, people who fly planes, pilots and whatnot. They say flight simulators are nothing like flying a real plane.
Right.
They kind of prepare you for it, but it's nothing like it. Same thing using a Cintiq. I think this is going to be pretty cool with an application like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, I was thinking about that, and I interviewed those guys a while back, and one of the questions I asked them, I haven't aired the interview yet, but one of the questions I asked them was, do you think Wacom or Wacom, however you pronounce it, are quaking in their boots because you guys have created this disruptive piece of inexpensive software that essentially turns your iPad and your iPhone now, because they've subsequently released an iPhone version, turns your iPad and your iPhone into a Cintiq with literally almost the same amount of latency that you get on a Cintiq. This was before the iPad Pro announcement. So now the iPad Pro is here, which is almost literally a Cintiq with the pencil stylus too. So, those guys have got to be dancing in the streets in San Francisco, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, think about it. How much is a Cintiq? It's like $7,000 for a high-end version?
Yeah, it's out of reach. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'd be really worried if I were them.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm excited to see this stuff. One of the other things I thought about is Sarah France is another friend of the show. She's a high-end wedding photographer down in San Diego. She does kind of these really, expensive but very well done wedding gigs. And I remember a while ago, I've known Sarah forever, like 4 years ago or something, part of her deliverable to the client, remember these are high-end weddings, part of her deliverable to the client was a set of iPads. with the wedding photos on them.
Wow.
You know? So,
Wow.
right, in this like beautiful box and all this stuff. You can imagine, right? This is, the rich have a different life.
Different world. Yeah, different world.
so
Different reality.
I'm thinking, can you imagine? You do a wedding and then 2 iPad Pros show up with the wedding shots on them. Like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm just throwing these in for you because you paid X dollars for the wedding. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm really excited to see where this 12.9-inch iPad will go, but I'm still on the fence. I think I got to wait until I go into an Apple store and actually hold it. Yeah. And let that reality take hold of, okay, I got to have it, which I'm sure will happen a couple of weeks or a month after it's shipped.
And feel the size, right? You got to feel the size of it in your hand to see how big it is and how widely it may be. Is it bigger than like the 13-inch, MacBook Pro?
Size, right? No, actually, my daughter has a MacBook Air, and that's a 12.9-inch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's the same.
Looking at that, I'm like, that's it right there. It's just
Well, what about this keyboard? I mean, you guys care about the keyboard? Again, like we teased at the beginning, this is like the Microsoft Surface keyboard with the magnetic attachment and all that. And Apple invented it, quote, and relaunched it. But it's obvious. I've been kind of personally, what I would like to see is a MacBook Pro with a removable screen. Where you remove the screen and the screen becomes an iPad, and then you click it back in there, and now you're on a Mac OS MacBook Pro. This is kind of getting close to that. Dan, is this something you would use?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely would. Now that's getting a little bit larger, but you got to understand that you got the iOS operating system versus Mac OS.
Yeah.
And just grab my monitor like that and just like slide it in a little case, and I could be on a train or something doing it like that. That would actually be pretty cool because there's still apps that I use that I rely on my laptop. I'm on it every day that I still can't do on an iPad. But I'm a little more excited about all the apps that are going to come for this that are going to really take advantage of it. I think that's going to be huge, and that will just have to roll out over time to see where that's going to go.
Yeah, it's such an interesting ecosystem these guys are putting together, all the way from the iPhone 5S all the way up through this big guy, which is running the same exact operating system. It's very well executed all the way through.
Yeah, but other things like these mounted in walls displays at stores, even in your home eventually, when my price might change a little bit, or they could be affordable, where that's that's your entry system for your house.
Yeah. Oh, you're killing me. You're killing me with this.
Pictures, it's not just a thing on the desktop now. I mean, it could be really cool.
Yeah. All right. So Juan, what did you think about the Apple Pencil? Is it something that you would use, or are you a finger guy?
Well, I would definitely use it.
Lots of jokes there. Sorry.
I would love to use Apple Pencil, but honestly, on the road, I love my iPad Mini. I can't imagine taking something like the iPad Pro on the road with me because I'm taking my laptop when I need something that big and I need a full keyboard. Yeah. And unfortunately, the iPad still cannot replace the laptop, right? We are out in the field shooting. We're downloading, hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes of raw files. Yeah. I can't put that on my iPad. I can't do it. Someday I hope to be able to do that, and then at that point, yes, that would make sense. But for the time being, I think I'm sticking with my iPad Mini. I wish the Apple Pencil would work on the Mini, and I would buy one in a heartbeat for sure.
But we don't know that it won't yet, right? They haven't said it won't.
Well, I think at least I don't think it works for the iPad Mini that they just released because nobody's mentioned that. I tried to find out, and because I was kind of excited, think, maybe it works with the iPad Mini. That would be an excuse to actually buy the new iPad Mini because I have the two. The first one with the Retina display. This would be upgrading to the 4. But I have not been able to find anything that works for the Mini. So.
I'm gonna place a bet and say that Pencil is gonna work with any iOS device. This is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that they did because when they were going through the keynote and they were talking about 3D touch and all that. I understand the 3D touch technology that they put into the iPhone 6 Plus and all that, but they didn't say anything about that with regard to the iPad. They were just talking about the size of it and the resolution, which leads me to believe that it's very similar to the previous iPads, and if so, the Pencil will work all the way down the line.
They talked about a little chip inside there too.
What? Oh, did they? In the pencil?
I don't think they showed something, and I have to review it to see.
Yeah, there is a processor in the pencil itself, and I think the pencil is the one that measures like the angle. But you know what? No, they did mention something about the angle being the angle of how you're holding the pencil against the screen.
Yeah, multiple sensors.
Combination of both the iPad and the pencil. So that both devices were the ones that helped calculate.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I do remember that. Oh, all right.
So, yeah.
So maybe you'll have limited functionality on previous iPads and full on iPad Pro.
Hey, I'll take it.
All right, on to apps now. So another announcement that came out from Apple was the Apple TV, which I've been waiting for as well, because I've got Apple TVs polluting my entire house.
Me too.
And and they work great except for a couple of gotchas, and it looked like in the keynote, as demonstrated, most of those gotchas were taken care of. Dan, did you see this thing? Did you see the Apple TV?
Absolutely, yeah. One of the main things, that damn click. You know, to put your numbers in and put your letters in. They figured that one out. So right.
Oh my God. Oh,
the bane of my existence, the Apple TV remote, right there. Yeah.
I think my thumb
in the
hurts.
meantime, is you download the app for your phone, and you can literally just slide on your phone and do it.
You know, I do that all the time, but it's still the
You're just laying there. I know.
It's still the time to sit there, and you gotta. I mean, it works on the watch too. There's a remote app on the watch. But it's still, you got to launch it, and it's got to wait. It's got to find it and register. You know, it's just like sometimes you just want a remote.
Well, the new Apple TV looks great. I will see how well that works. That could be pretty good. Quick search.
Yeah.
I mean,
the demo was unreal. The fact that this person was able to whittle down their selection of what they wanted to watch by just adding new modifiers via voice, that was incredible to me. That was awesome.
Yeah, and that's like a direction of where search is going, because Google has been doing that for like a year and a half, 2 years, or where they're doing this intelligent search where you can say, I'm looking for cookies, okay, but I meant chocolate chip, and it will look at the previous search that you did and factor that into the subsequent search. So they're doing a similar thing with Siri, which makes perfect sense on the TV, like you said in that demo.
I think the TV is so much better. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say our Comcast Xfinity has you can download an app for your phone and search your TV. It was more gimmick than anything else. We've tried it, but we don't really use it. So we'll see how this one works.
Yeah. The laughable piece of that keynote for me was where I was like, come on, guys, was on the Apple TV thing, the woman that was demonstrating the Apple TV and talking about the screensavers. Which are just like HD videos that play, and she spent minutes going on about, and these are exclusive. I'm like, everything I shoot is exclusive. These are exclusive HD videos. I'm like, everything. My phone shoots HD. I mean, come on, it's not impressing. And she goes on to say, and at night, it shows nighttime scenes.
Whoa.
That's high technology right there.
You actually got smart to flip it to a different folder after 6 p.m. That's brilliant.
Hey, that just goes to show you that really the master of the reality distortion field was Steve Jobs. No one else. If Steve said that, it would be everybody would be like, wow.
Yeah, I was like, Steve said it, I'd be like, brilliant. Oh my God, you guys have changed my life. And she said it, I was like, come on. Come on. Yeah, but Apple TV is going to be cool. I was looking at it from the standpoint also of this whole, like I mentioned earlier, is a whole Apple ecosystem, right? So with Apple Music and Apple Photos now and, whatever else that you have, your movies that you're editing, now everything is kind of coming together with Apple TV into the living room, which is what I want. I mean, like I said, I'm an Apple fanboy or whatever because I like Apple stuff. It just works for the way my brain works. But in the end, I'm a photographer before I'm an Apple fanboy, and I consume media. So when I'm looking at this stuff, I just want stuff to work. I want my playlists from the music that I set up to show up everywhere that I want them, whether it's in the car, in my office, on my phone, in the living room. I don't want to have different services for that. I want my photo albums everywhere, and I don't want to have to worry about it. Give me the path of least resistance. I feel like they're almost there, they're not quite there yet. They're almost there. I mean, are you guys kind of in that same boat, or are you? There's other people that say, yeah, I don't want to put all my eggs in the Apple basket. I'd rather have Spotify for music and whatever, all these disparate services because they do different things better. But for me, it's like lowest common denominator. Juan, what do you think?
Oh, absolutely, man. I can go from my desktop to my laptop to my iPad to my phone to my Apple TV and have access to all my same music, all my pictures are there, whatnot. It doesn't matter where I am. Now, it used to be that whenever I traveled anywhere, I always had my laptop with me. Well, guess what? I don't do that anymore. Oftentimes, I just take my iPad and my iPhone, and I'm done, and I'm happy. I don't have to, because I have access to everything. I have access to all my documents, whether they're in Dropbox or iCloud. I have access to all my pictures. I have access to all my music. So absolutely, I'm. You could say I'm a fanboy as well, but I eat this up. The ecosystem for me is just probably the most compelling part about Apple. Not just the fact that their stuff just works, but the fact that I don't have to. I mean, my background, as you know, is in the technology field.
Yeah.
I used to do a lot of stuff with, build large computer systems, super complicated stuff. But you know what? When I go home, like I have a lot of friends that have super automated systems at their home that they walk in and they say, it's almost like the clapper. They kind of clap. They don't really clap, but they say, lights on, and the lights go on, the music goes on, the mood light. And I'm like, I just want to flip a switch, man, because when that stuff goes bad, I don't want to be debugging my house.
Right.
There's too much technology. The fact that all this stuff works and it's one place is simple is huge for me. And I think it's the same with you. I mean, we've talked about that. The fact that it's all there in one place, and you know how to get it, and it's I can access it from my living room, from my car, from wherever I am. It's huge.
Yeah, and it gets out of your way. Like at some point, you're like, okay. Yeah, I just want to listen to my, my techno playlist or whatever, and wherever you happen to be, whether I'm on a walk or I'm in the car or I'm in the bedroom or whatever, I just want to listen to it. I don't want to have to jump through hoops to get to that. Dan, what about you? Do you care about an ecosystem, or are you more of a kind of a la carte kind of guy?
I do. I really try not to. Years ago, when we put Little Theater in, I had a DVD carousel, and so if we liked a movie, when we had the extras, we'd buy the DVD. And a number of years ago, with digital coming, I'm like, okay, we have to commit. Hulu and Vudu and Apple. I mean, who's going to be around?
Right.
So we just chose Apple, and now we've been buying movies digitally. But getting ahead of ourselves, we're going to talk about phones in a minute. I actually switched to a Samsung a couple months ago because I like that S6 Edge, and I was just like, no, I need to change. I can't put all my eggs in exactly what you're talking about. And you know what? I had 14-day window. I went back and traded it back in for an iPhone.
You're like a crackhead. You're like, I gotta go back. I gotta go back.
Were you shaking?
Yeah. Yeah, and it was all about the integration. That was the number one thing. The phone was a beautiful device of Android, but I liked the customization, but that integration wasn't there. As soon as I get my iPhone back, I put my iCloud account. Bloop, there's all my pictures.
Yeah.
My wife and I each have a separate calendar. We each share it. She could see mine, I could see hers. There's so many aspects of it that are great. Now resetting everything. I've got my phone and laptop's ringing, and I can answer the phone on my laptop, or push it right over to the TV. And we've got Apple TVs in 3 rooms, so the integration is nice. You just got to get over I don't want to give Apple all my money. If you kind of put that out of the way about Apple and Microsoft and Android, and really just come down to what works. For me, this is it.
Yeah, you look online, and by the way, Dan, we lost your video for a second there. The people online that complain about Apple and this and all that, you gotta step back and think, okay, what am I trying to do? It's not about the car that you're driving, to use a car analogy. It's not about the car. It's about where you're going, and how you're getting there. If you're a photographer, like we talk about gear all the time on All About the Gear and on TWiP. In the end, it's not so much about if you're using Panasonic, Nikon, Canon, Sony, or whatever. It's about the shot that you're trying to get, and no one cares at the end of the day. The same with this Apple stuff. It's like, okay, when I'm sitting at my computer here in my office and I want to listen to a particular playlist, I don't care how I get to it. I just want to get to it with the path of least resistance, right, Juan?
Right, I mean, it's not just the path of least resistance, but it's time, right? To me, my time is super valuable, not necessarily from a business perspective, but from a family perspective. You know, anything that takes my time away from spending with my family or being able to earn more money is huge. And the fact that, you know, I don't have to mess around with this stuff. You know, I don't want to go in and, you know, customize my screen to be exactly different that does all this crazy stuff, or I want to be able to change the way I log into my phone or anything. You know, to me that stuff is superfluous. I just want something that I can use. I don't have to worry about viruses. I don't have to worry about stuff going bad on my phone. I've never had an iPhone. I have had, I want to say, every single iPhone that's been out. Yeah. I've upgraded through every single one. I haven't had one single iPhone where, you know, it crashed and I couldn't recover any of my stuff. Yeah. I've never had any loss of data or information on any of my iPhones.
Yeah, yeah, and people will call us fanboys and all that, and I'm the same way. You know, I've had most of the iPhones that have come out, and in the end, especially when I'm on the road and traveling, I just need these things to work every single time I turn them on. I need to be able to make calls. I need to be able to do text messaging. I need to be able to get on the web, and I need my whatever 5 core apps that I always use. You know, I need all that stuff to work. If it works, I'm good. I'm golden. I don't care about, okay, well, on this platform you can customize this and you can change that and you can do this and that, you know, all this stuff. That's great for the people that enjoy doing that, but for me, it's a tool. It's a wrench. I'm not obsessing over the curvature of the wrench that I buy. I'm obsessing over the fact that I can build something with this wrench. You
know, that the time factor is a really important thing. As a good examples, I had an extra PC. We had a big, huge 52-inch display on the wall. I'm like, oh, great, I'll make a slideshow and I'll put it on there. I spent more time trying to get that PC to get it to a slideshow at the right time with the right images. And then we had new stuff we shot, but then I got to get that into there. And this is when first Apple TV came out, I don't know how many years ago, with the expensive one with the hard drive.
Oh, yeah.
So then we started burning DVDs. But on a HD display, you're only at 525 lines resolution, and your big, beautiful photos don't look great. Well, I went to the Apple TV, synced it up, and essentially moving forward to what we had now, we had one Apple TV on that 52-inch display with its own iCloud account, and I would just drop photos in there instantly, and then suddenly I've got that slideshow up at the studio. Now we do it at home too, right from our iCloud account. Just, you know, we put it on the background with music. People are over, just whatever, and just, you know, your photos from your phone. You're not even thinking about it.
Yeah, it just works.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys, I want to move on to story number 2. We're still on story number 1, you know?
Wow.
So we're 48 minutes in. So story number 2 is about the iPhone. Again, this is an Apple show, right? So they announced the iPhone 6S and the 6S Plus. So the big thing about these is, like we mentioned before, they have it was Force Touch, now it's 3D Touch. Is the technology where you can press a little and something happens, you press harder and something else happens on the screen. They've also got a new 12-megapixel sensor in these cameras, a retina flash, which basically lights up the brightness of the screen to become a flash. And the thing that got me on the edge of my couch while I was watching the keynote was 4K footage. You can do 4K video with these phones in your pocket. So 3840 by 2160, 8 million pixels per frame with optical image stabilization, and I believe that's only on the 6 Plus version, right? Just like the previous. But even on the 6S, 4K. And then they have this feature called Live Photos, which captures 12 megapixel photos, and it captures a second and a half before and a second and a half after you actually take the photo, so you end up with a little snippet of cinematograph type motion in there, and it all works. I mean, it looks cool. I haven't played with this at all, but it looks cool. One, the phone. I mean, when you saw this, well, first of all, I knew they were going to announce new iPhones, and I saw this. I already have an iPhone 6, so I'm like, there's nothing that you could give me in a 6 whatever that's going to tempt me to go spend more money to get the next version of this. There's nothing you could do. And then I was like, okay, where do I sign?
You're exactly like me, right? We go into it saying, I got the 6. You know what? I did the same thing with the 4 and the 4S. I did the same thing with the 5 and the 5S. So I've already given up. I'm like, I know they're going to come up with something, especially on the photo side, that I'm going to want to do. You know, so the question is when. My contract, my contract of mine is due in November, so I may just wait till November to do it. I may not do it right away, but I may just wait till November. That's not bad. Yeah, the 12 megapixel sensor, I think is going to be great. I mean, I shoot with my iPhone so much. Not carrying my big cameras, especially family pictures and whatnot. I use that phone all the time. But even in my workshops, I shoot with that all the time. I'll take pictures with my big Canon and my big expensive lenses, and then I'll pull out my little iPhone and do click, click, click.
Yeah, and get great shots with it.
And get amazing shots and do the editing right there and share it right from there and whatnot, send it to my family. I'm really curious about the live photo stuff. I think it looks super cool.
Yeah.
But the question is, can you share these outside of the ecosystem?
Yeah. Well, they said Facebook was going to support them, and but who knows? We don't know. We won't know until we see the format.
Right.
But even then, I think I was thinking about the live photos thing. Even if they are trapped somehow, and you got to view them on an iPhone or iOS device or a Mac or something, I think the live photo. I'm excited about the Cinemagraph space to begin with Flixel and Cinemagraph Pro and all the stuff that they're doing. And I think this sort of legitimizes that space a lot and kind of shows people you don't have to just take one shot and you don't have to take a movie. You can do little snippets to tell the story better than a single frame could do. And now you can do this you actually automatically do it with every shot that you take with these new iPhones.
Just remember, now you have to buy the 128 gig phone though.
Yeah, of course.
Right? I mean, I've been doing with the 64, and I've been happy with it. I'm like, oh, crap, I need to buy the 128 gig.
If you're planning on shooting 4K footage and doing these live photos, forget about it. You need 128 at least.
No, I need 256, really.
Yeah, you need 256 or a petabyte or something. I don't know, Dan, what about you? Did you see this thing? I mean, you're a video guy and 3D and all that stuff. You had to be like at least.
Yeah, I was just like you guys. I'm like, I just got a brand new 6. I'm fine, Then there's two things. Obviously the 4K, which I'm like, really? Okay, let me see how that's gonna work.
Amazing.
Because last year when I came out, I got a Plus, and I was just like, I loved it. I loved using it, but honestly, it was too big. With the Pocket, I think we talked about it on one show. So I'm back to the regular 6. Photos are tremendous. So when I saw this, I'm like, no, what can they do? You keep adding megapixels. Megapixels is about size, and as photographers, we know that. But the general populace thinks, it's nobody's printing that large from iPhones, not yet anyway. But the usability is a big thing for me, and that 3D touch and just moving through and the amount of emails I go through and everything else.
It almost pays for itself right
digital
there.
Work and interestingly, we just switched carriers, so they have this program where you can literally just trade it in. So I'll probably definitely that 4K and that 3D push right there. And I forgot about the move the live pictures. So now you just sold me on it.
Yeah,
I think it's gonna be tremendous. I mean,
I think he's logging it right now to order it while we're on the.
Yeah.
Well, you want to know what's funny? I actually did. I stayed up late the other night. It was 2 a.m. because that's when the pre-orders came out, and I went on to Sprint and I pressed the thing. I'm like, great, I got it. I did 64 gig. The next morning, I see the email. It says 16 gig.
Oh.
So I don't know what happened in the interim. So
do they even
doing
make
a quick chat with the people that. Well, that's been the big issue with all their data alone. It's like I forget what they said, like 4 gigs or something in the base operating system. So that they're saving that size for the 7, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So they canceled the order, and then now for some reason it's screwed up. I can't do the reorder, but you have to get a little bit larger one with that 4K video.
You got it. Yeah, until Apple one day, hopefully Apple will open up the API and allow external storage. Wouldn't that be amazing if you could plug in an external hard drive and have it just see that like some other Android phones allow you to do and save externally? Wouldn't that be great? Yeah. That would just change the whole thing. But then if they did that, I can see the meeting at Apple now. They're like, okay, if we allow storage, there will be no reason for people to buy our high-end version, and everyone will buy the cheap version and just buy cheap external storage. So
and moving those storage devices around opens up to viruses and all kinds of stuff. Surprising upgrade.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting. Clearly both of you guys are buying these, and Juan, you mentioned you're on a 6. So Dan, you started with a 6 Plus and then downgraded to a 6.
I did.
Juan, did you ever go to the 6 Plus?
No, you know what? I've considered the 6 Plus, but the problem is that, because I've been thinking, if you compare the size of the Plus and the iPad Mini,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that much bigger, right? The iPad Mini, it's just slightly bigger. But there are some apps that I use that are iPad apps that you can't really run on the 6 Plus.
Yeah.
If I could run iPad apps on the 6 Plus, I'm telling you, I'd get the 6 Plus and ditch the Mini, because that would be one less device. But I can't. So I mean, I can't imagine myself using a 6 Plus and a Mini and my laptop. So I'm sticking with a regular small size phone, I think.
You know what I want to see? I'll issue the gauntlet right now to the TWiP army. I will PayPal $20 to the first person that sends me a photo of a stranger, it can't be you, of a stranger taking a photo outside with an iPad Pro.
Oh my God.
I've seen people with with the big iPad Airs. I want to see someone with an iPad Pro taking a photo of something. You gotta love it.
I have a very good friend that shoots with the iPad all the time, and I was making lots of fun. I was saying, dude, what are you doing? You're embarrassing me. I don't know you. Walk away from me. I don't want to be anywhere near me. And he said the reason I actually shoot with the iPad is because he's got bad eyesight. And when he takes those pictures, he has this viewfinder that's basically humongous, right?
Does he use a loop on there while he's doing it?
No, but he doesn't. He has bad close-up vision, so it works for him.
Hey, well, if that's the case, that's totally plausible, and absolutely, I would use it for that if my eyesight was going as well. But people that don't have bad eyesight, that are just out there, that are out there with the big iPad taking shots of it. Dan, I was at the Bean in Chicago, and I saw people with their iPads taking photos of the Bean with their iPads. Come on.
Mostly grandmas and grandpas, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
I mean, I think if my iPads were going, I still wouldn't shoot with an iPad.
Yeah.
I just principle alone. I'm like, I'm a photographer. The thing is, I'm shooting really small now with that little Samsung for most of my stuff and even the workshops. But there was a time when our daughter was little in school and never did the huge sports thing and egos and stuff like that. But when there was the plays, I did bring the big Nikon D3 with the 70-200. I'm like, excuse me, guys. Yeah, and I'd come in there.
Yeah, you're that guy.
Just had to do that a little bit. I refuse to shoot with an iPad. I even avoid pulling out the phone just not to be. I don't know if you talked about this on any of the shows, but the wedding photographers and that controversy that's going on lately about those people with their phones in the way of the pros doing their own. So it's a whole other show. But
that is a whole other show. Yeah, it's an interesting world that we're moving into. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Adobe. And continuing with our Apple theme, they announced an app called Photoshop Fix as part of the whole iPad Pro launch. All right, guys, we're back. Let's round out the show with the third story, and that's Adobe. They demoed 3 mobile apps that are due to hit in October. And let's see, it was Photoshop Comp CC, Photoshop Sketch, and Photoshop Fix. And these look interesting. And Juan, I want to throw this at you first. When you saw these apps, over the last year, and a couple of the interviews that I've done on TWiP have been with developers that are making these insane apps that are doing desktop quality processing. It's no longer like, okay, if you're going to do it on the phone or on your iPad, you're limited. They're doing layers and adjustment layers and all this stuff now. Now with these newer processors and the bigger iPad, do you think that now Adobe and Apple are kind of coming into their own and legitimizing the iOS platform for real soup to nuts content creation?
Well, I mean, a lot of folks are talking about the processor power in that new iPad Pro being at the same level as some of the lower-end MacBooks. So I don't see why that's not the case. There's enough horsepower there to do this. And then there are other companies, and I know that Adobe is trying to do this also. They're farming out some of the processing-intensive tasks out to the cloud as well.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have all that horsepower. You just have to have enough horsepower in those devices. I was really impressed with the apps that these guys showed during the keynote. My biggest issue has been that, to me, Adobe has been kind of schizophrenic about all these iPad apps.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they kind of like come up with an app, you know, they release it, they do something with it, then they rename it, they changed it, they pull it, then they produce another one, as opposed to, they don't seem to have a cohesive, you know, plan here. You know, they
And
do
you
have
remember
some of
last year they came out with a ruler and a pencil too for
That's right. And
for
what
the
happened to
iPad.
that? Is that anywhere? I don't know. So
I
yeah, I
don't know.
mean, I think they're just throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah.
I like their Lightroom app, the companion Lightroom app, which is pretty neat.
Mhm.
I want to see these guys kind of like put a stake in the ground and say, hey, this is our Photoshop for the iPad, and then we're adding all these cool features as opposed to having these sort of standalone apps, because I think that's confusing. I think that they're missing an opportunity to really bring people in to spend quality time with these apps when they just introduce new apps and you're not. I mean, I have like 3 Adobe apps on my phone and I don't even know what they do anymore.
Yeah. There's a whole suite of apps that they make. Yeah, I agree with you. They need to like go medieval on the iPad and just say
Right.
we're going to build something and crush it and allow developer or designers and photographers to do whatever you need to do. The desktop is no longer the primary. You can be primary on iOS. But I think about this stuff, and Dan, specifically, I want to throw this at you because you're the 3D guy and you are in that world deep, right? So
yeah,
when I look at the iPad, and you know, I love my iPad Mini, and I play with it, and I'm in apps like, you know, Snapseed on there, and Pixelmator, and all these cool apps that work on there. Work great, but I never feel. Whenever I feel like I need to do quote serious work, I'm always coming here to the desktop, to the iMac, you know, because I feel like I need a mouse, I need a keyboard, I need to sit here with my coffee and like, you know, zoom in and do stuff. I don't feel like right now, at least with the tools that I have, that I could go in and say do a high-end retouching job on a model shoot and just do it and be satisfied that I'm done in the end for a number of reasons. Like I don't know if the iPads aren't color corrected, or you know, like I look at these and I'm like, okay, I can start on there, but I'm always going to finish on a quote proper computer. What do you feel? Where do you fall on that?
I'm 100% in agreement. Exact same thing. Up until now, it was gimmicky. It was fun. It was okay. So, you know, for my phone and my iPad, it's just been like, yeah, photos to share, and let me do a cool effect and post it online. But when it was serious work, always the laptop or the main desktop. But the thing too with that is storage. You know, I have to spend more work to get that photo over to that thing to get it to work.
Right.
That's always been the case up until now. Now with the iPad Pro and that sitting next to my laptop or my main system, and I'm just syncing and using it as a secondary monitor, and now I'm pulling in and I'm actually sitting back and I'm, you know, and really retouching like this, but that photo's living on my drive or living, you know, on the desktop, and this is now acting like a Cintiq. That's where now I'm starting to think, hey, this could be a real game changer. So we just got to wait and see. I agree with Len too about the schizophrenic apps. I mean, oh, cool. On iPad, I still got to have it on my main system. I have my workflow, and that's what works for me. The iPad's just displaying or showing or carrying it around, and I'll have to do, you know, put everything in iTunes and copy it over. So we'll see how that Pro changes things.
Yeah, no,
I think
I
one of
agree
the cool
with you.
things, I think that is going to change that though, is the new iDrive or iCloud Drive.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, I agree with you, Dan, in that it was a pain in the butt to move the files back and forth. Right, you're editing, you're working on the iPad with something, you're working on the desktop or not. I think the iCloud Drive. I don't know if you noticed with iOS 9, now there's an iCloud Drive icon, just like a Dropbox icon, which allows you to browse your iCloud Drive, so you can actually access the files that are on your desktop on your iPad like they were just regular files. I think that's gonna change that, and that's gonna make it a lot easier, because that's been a big problem for me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been using that cloud drive for quite a while now. The iCloud Drive, I pay for the upgrade, you know, for the extra storage, and really been doing all my Pages docs and everything and things like that, and can get to those mobile. So I know that it was coming, that it's getting towards that, and I think that iPad Pro is really going to change, especially with that keyboard, because we were traveling to Europe a couple of years ago, didn't bring a computer, didn't bring the phone. Well, the phone was off, so I bought a little Bluetooth keyboard, and the iPad clicks in. Keyboard, you know, so this thing being a full-size keyboard, and the iPad Air, or excuse me, the MacBook Air, the processor is really, really terrible. I think the iPad Pro is actually going to be a little zippier than that thing.
Yeah, I wonder though, just talking about just production and sitting down, even if you have a fully decked out, top of the line iPad Pro, you got the keyboard, you got the pencil with it, and you're sitting down, you're like, okay, I'm going to get some work done, I'm going to retouch. Sitting there for hours with that versus sitting at a desktop with a mouse and a keyboard, I wonder, can you do that? Like, because I see like reaching and touching the screen to manipulate, and there's no mouse, so touching the screen to get around, and then grabbing the pencil, and now you're on the keyboard, and I wonder, is it learned behavior that's going to be easier than using a desktop, or is it you're going to be forcing yourself to compromise to use this thing?
Well, I've had a regular Wacom for years, and I've gone through all different iterations of those. I still don't use it that much. I'm still better off with the mouse because I'm kind of trying to get used to that. And I'm like, oh, cool, I'll use this. You know what? I still go back. I even got the really good one, and it just. But I think on screen though, to really go in and do things, I think I would use it more like that, especially if it's just an extension of that desktop.
I think that's where you hit it. You hit it right on the head. I think it's if you try to force it into doing everything, then it's probably not going to be optimal. But if you're like Dan saying, you're using it as an extension of the desktop, using something like AstroPad or an app like that, where you're extending the desktop and it gives you more power instead of limiting your power, then you're golden. Yeah, so I don't know. It's exciting. Sounds like everybody on this show is going to be buying an iPad Pro at some point. Oh man, interesting. All right, guys, let's end the show. Let's dive into listener Q&A. This is the segment where listeners get to pose a question to you guys, and look at this question. It's from Charles. Charles says, I was thinking about pulling the trigger on buying a Cintiq tablet to do my retouching, but with the announcement of the new iPad Pro this week, I'm wondering if I should hold off and wait for the new iPad Pencil and iPad Pro. I have an idea of what you guys say. Dan, what do you think? Should Charles wait, or should he plunk down $8,000 and get a Cintiq?
You know what? Buy the Cintiq. If it doesn't work, send it to me, and I'll buy you an iPad Pro.
Yeah, you'll sell it and buy 4 or 5 iPad Pros.
No, seriously, I would wait. I don't know. Juan, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, I think that's a no-brainer. At this point, considering this is a fraction of the price, buy it, try it out, and if it doesn't work, you can still go to the Cintiq.
You still have other uses for it.
Well, yeah, exactly. You still have an iPad, so I would definitely wait, get this, and try it out at least.
Love it. Yeah, that's an easy question. Thank you, Charles, for giving us that easy question. You gotta wonder, like, if the Cintiq guys, which I imagine they were watching that keynote, what they were thinking, because I don't know. I mean, obviously, none of us knows what percentage of overall net revenue the Cintiq represents for Wacom, but it's got to represent something because they're still making them, right? So I'm wondering if they watch this and they're like, oh, okay, get the CEO on the phone,
I met the Wacom guys; they're really good guys. So, so hopefully they can maybe even develop software for it,
There you go. Yeah, you gotta adapt with it. Adapt or die, as Darwin said. All right, guys. Listeners, if you have a question you'd like us to tackle in the show, visit us at thisweekinphoto.com. Click on that Submit a Question link and send us a question, or you can leave us a voice message. All right, let's jump into our Picks of the Week segment. Remember, you guys can pick anything to recommend to the TWiP Army as long as it is somehow related to photography. Juan Pons, I'm going to let you go first. What is your Pick of the Week? Well,
my Pick of the Week is a Mindshift Gear First Light 30L or 30-liter photo backpack. The Mindshift Gear is kind of an offshoot of Think Tank Photo. Think Tank Photo, I've loved Think Tank Photo, or the camera bag, all my camera bags. If I pan my camera over there, you would send me into rehab because you think that I had an obsession with camera bags, because I do.
We all do. Don't worry about it. We all do.
The Think Tank Photos, I think, are the best bags out there. The difference with the Mindshift Gear, they're made by the same guys, but the Mindshift Gear line of products is made more for the outdoors. For people who are hiking and whatnot. So, for example, this First Light 30-liter backpack has incredibly comfy harness, so you can carry big gear for long distances out in the outdoors. Plus, it has a pocket for a little water bladder, so you can actually take hydration with you. Very, very well designed. I mean, it has all the same features and the same thought process behind the think tank bag. So I'm loving that First Light bag.
So what does that bag cost?
I don't know actually. I think it's somewhere around $300.
Oh wait, I'm looking at it right now. I just looked it up. It is, wait for it, $279.99, $280, $280.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, just the think tank bags for me have been the best bags in the market for forever, and the Mindshift gear bags are made by the same guys. They're just more, the think tank bags were mostly made for photojournalists, urban photographers.
Yeah.
But even though I'm an outdoor wildlife photographer, I still use the think tank bags. But this Mindshift gear stuff is kind of the mentality behind the think tank, but geared for the outdoors. So. Very cool stuff.
It's completely unrelated to photography and this show.
Okay.
I thought about you a couple days ago. I was watching a documentary. I think it was either on Netflix or HBO Go, and it was called Wild, and it was about this woman who decided to hike from the Pacific Coast Trail from Mexico, the border of Mexico, all the way up to to California. And one scene in there, I thought about you and these trips that you take. One scene was at the beginning of her trip. She had brought everything known to man. She's like Charlie Brown, right? She had everything, and she's this little woman.
Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah, Reese Witherspoon. Yeah, she's this little woman, and she's like a turtle with a shell that's like 5 times too big, trying to stand up.
Well, that was actually a very popular book, and I read the book and I saw the movie, and she had this little woman. She had her backpack weighed over 100 pounds. I almost weighed as much as she did. It was like incredible that she was able to carry that. No, I'm a little more restrained than that, especially nowadays. I'm carrying a lot less equipment than I used to. So.
Yeah. But you know what it made me realize, because most of my camera bags, I have some think tank camera bags and some low pro. And they all have the little rain shield that comes out that you can put over them. And in one scene, she was using it on her backpack. She had the rain shield she pulled out over her backpack. I was like, oh, okay, that's what that's for.
That's what that's for, huh?
I shoot models, man. We don't go through all that stuff. So that was great. Love it. Yeah, so listeners, check that show out. It's called Wild, and I think it's either HBO Go, Showtime.
It's an HBO Go. It's a movie that was out just like, was out 6 months ago.
Yeah,
so, it's really, an HBO Go right now.
Really, really good. It'll make you want to hike.
Very nice.
Make you want to go for a hike after you watch that. Cool. All right, thanks, Juan. All right, Dan Ablin, what's your pick of the week?
Okay, my pick of the week is something I just saw in Wired magazine today called Camera Restricta, and it uses GPS metadata, and it looks at, I forget the numbers, 30. It identifies more than 35 photos taken in any given location, about 115 feet in any direction from where you're standing, and the camera shutter retracts and blocks a viewfinder so you can't take a photo. So if you end up going to the same places all the time and taking all the same photos, this camera will not let you. You have to find a new way to see something and to take it.
That's so cool. I love it. Camera restricted.
All it needs is a whip to come out and whip you on the head.
I know.
Do something different.
They need. It'd be cool if they had some sort of software that would allow you to, like, celebrities could say, you know what, I don't want to ever be photographed at all. And this software would download into all the cameras on the planet, so whenever you aimed at that person, it would recognize the face and blur them.
That's kind of what this is doing. It's limiting your shutter. Yeah. And it's funny because when I was in school for photography, we had 24 or 36 shots, and they would say, take a shot of this garbage can, take 3 rolls, and you had to force yourself to see that. Now everybody's just shooting. And even as I walk the city, I'm taking some of the same shots that I took 30 years ago when I was in high school. So on one hand, it's like, hey, don't tell me what I can't take, but at the same time, it's kind of cool because it forces me to, all right, get back to where I was all those years ago and forcing my eye to see something a little bit different.
Totally, totally. It reminds me when I went through a similar exercise when I was in the Air Force learning to be a photographer, and they had an exercise where we were shooting film, obviously, so you get one roll of film, so 36 exposures and a 50 millimeter lens. They dropped us in downtown Denver because I think we were at the Air Force Academy at the time, so dropped us in downtown Denver. And no, downtown Colorado Springs, and you got to come back with at least, I think they said 7 to 10 workable head and shoulder shots with a 50 mil lens, which meant you had to get into the personal space and start a conversation. The whole exercise was about breaking into the personal space and getting over your fears of talking to people. But yeah, you like 36 exposures. Talk about an exercise in limitation and making sure you got the shot. The cherry on the cherry on the cake or the cupcake was it was slide film. So slide film, if you guys, Chrome has an exposure latitude of plus or minus a third of a stop.
Right. So you're being kind.
Yeah, you got to nail it. You got to nail the exposure. So not only you got to be competent, you're shooting manual, obviously. So you got to nail the exposure, nail the composition, and start a conversation with a stranger and get the shot. So yeah, I think we should do one. You guys should do a workshop like this.
We should.
Yeah.
I think it would rock. All right, guys, we are at the end of another episode of TWiP. I want to thank our sponsor for their support of the show. Without them, the show would have not been possible. Juan Pons, what do you got coming up in the coming months?
Well, like I said, my workshop season is kicking off. I'm headed out to Acadia National Park in the next couple of weeks, but in December, I'm doing another workshop at Bosque del Apache in New Mexico. And if you don't know Bosque, it's a place where there's hundreds and thousands, actually, of snow geese and sandhill cranes coming in to roost at night. It's just spectacular with these beautiful sunsets and sunrises. So I still have room in that workshop. Anybody that wants to check it out should go to my website and look at all the pretty pictures and what you'll be able to photograph. So, yeah, New Mexico, I love going out there, and I'm happy to be going again this year.
And what's your website URL again?
My website is juanpons.org. That's JUANPONS.org.
Excellent. And thanks for coming on the show, man. Always a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. Always a pleasure. I love being here.
All right, cool. And Dan Ablin, what's going on with you? What do you have coming up in the coming months?
Not a whole lot.
I ain't doing nothing, man. I'm hanging out in Chicago, eating falafels.
Let's see. I'm speaking at a digital conference in November. I got some new training videos coming up for 3D, and working on picking up some new 3D work and networking and a few other things I can't talk about just yet, but looking for some collaboration, anybody that's out there, and that's about it right now. Yeah.
All right. And if people want to collaborate with you, work with you, hire you, where should they go to connect with you? About.me/Dan Ablin. Nice. About.me/Dan Ablin. Excellent. All right.
Yeah, and I'm working on updating my site.
You should update your site. I'm working on updating my site as well as TWiP. In fact, I'll reveal it today. We're working on another new redesign of This Week in Photo, which hopefully won't happen probably for another month or two. But when we do relaunch it, Wampons, something that we're working on better be included in there. What are we working on, Wampons?
We're working on moving the digital photo experience over to the TWiP network. We're very excited about that, and I think the summer got in the way and messed up our schedule, but we need to keep at that, and hopefully by the time we do the relaunch, that'd be great to do both relaunches at the same time.
Yeah. It's
no pressure. Awesome. No pressure.
It's going to be awesome. When we redesigned TWiP into its current incarnation, it was. Granted, I love the look of TWiP right now. It's beautiful.
I do too. Yeah.
But it's like your family's growing and you need more bedrooms. we're doubling up in bunk beds and sleeping on the couches and stuff, and it's just uncomfortable. So we need to make it a little bit more comfortable.
We're all sharing one bathroom, right?
Sharing one bathroom, yeah, and one takes 3-hour showers. So.
Yes. It's all that, all that hairdo that I gotta do.
Yeah, there you go. Well, cool. All right, lots of stuff to look forward to. Listeners, obviously, you can check us out at thisweekinphoto.com. Check out the site, and geez, with that, it is time to take that lens cap off.